So, um, think about the kindest, like, most generously amazing boss you've ever had.
Oh, right, the one who, throws those lavish holiday parties.
Yeah, exactly. The one who hands out surprise bonuses
Yeah.
and, like, never says no to an expense report. What if I told you that person was actually systematically destroying your company?
I mean, it sounds completely backward, but
Right. Today, we're looking at a 500-year-old warning that suggests exactly that. It's an argument that takes our most cherished ideas about kindness and generosity and leadership and just completely flips them on their head.
it's a genuinely unsettling premise, to be honest.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are really excited you're joining us for this one. Our mission today is to completely dissect an excerpt from a classic text on leadership.
Specifically focusing on a chapter titled Of Liberality and Parsimony.
Right. We're going to explore this deeply counterintuitive concept of why trying to be seen as a good, generous person might actually be the quickest path to your own destruction.
And, just to give you some context before we plunge in, this text was famously written as an instruction manual for a prince.
Like a ruler trying to maintain control of his state.
Right, exactly. But the underlying mechanics we are about to unpack, they are completely universal. We are really talking about the physics of power here.
Whether you're running a country or, managing a department.
Or honestly, just trying to navigate complex social dynamics. These concepts challenge our fundamental assumptions about what virtue actually means when it collides with the real world.
Okay, so let's unpack this because the text doesn't even start with the money stuff.
No, it doesn't.
Before we get into the whole debate about being generous versus being stingy, the author sets the stage by addressing the absolute absurdity of human expectations.
Right. It essentially lists out all the opposing qualities a leader could possibly have.
It's quite the list, honestly.
It's a comprehensive inventory of human nature. The author contrasts being merciful with being cruel. He weighs being liberal against being mean.
And we should probably clarify that, right? In this historical context, liberal simply means being financially generous or lavish.
Yes, good point. Just means stingy or frugal.
Yeah.
He contrasts being a giver with being rapacious.
And it just keeps going. It contrasts being faithful with being faithless.
Effeminate and pusillanimous.
Which means lacking courage, right? Cowardly.
Exactly. He puts that up against being fierce and spirited, humane versus proud.
Lascivious versus chaste. Honest versus astute.
Hard versus agreeable, grave versus light, religious versus unbelieving.
It's exhaustive. But what's crucial to understand about this list is that the author isn't making a moral judgment right out of the gate.
No, he's just stating what people think.
Right. He explicitly acknowledges the societal weight behind these words. He says everyone would confess that it would be incredibly praiseworthy to find a leader who possesses only the qualities that are held to be good.
But let's be real here. Looking at that list, we are basically demanding a unicorn.
Oh, totally. It's like a ridiculously perfect dating profile or a ludicrous job description.
Seeking a fierce, spirited, humane, chaste, honest, agreeable, grave, and religious leader who is also boundlessly generous.
Right. It's an impossible standard. We want a flawless deity, not a real human being.
And what I find so fascinating here is the sheer bluntness with which the text shuts this down.
It really does. It essentially says, stop dreaming. The exact phrasing is that a person cannot have all these good qualities, nor wholly observe them, because human conditions do not permit it.
That phrase right there, human conditions do not permit it, is the bedrock of the entire philosophy we are discussing today.
It really sets the tone.
The author is methodically dismantling centuries of utopian idealism. He isn't arguing that we shouldn't aspire to be good.
Right.
He is stating that the reality of human existence, the scarcity of resources, the competing desires, the inherent selfishness of crowds, it makes pure goodness an operational impossibility.
I do want to challenge the idea of these pairings for a second, though.
Sure, go ahead.
When we look at something like being giving versus being rapacious, that isn't just a slight personality difference, is it?
No, it's pretty extreme.
Right. Being rapacious in the context of a state means systematically extracting wealth by force. How can the text argue that a leader should ever tolerate a trait like that?
I see what you're saying.
Isn't the whole point of a government to protect people from being plundered?
That is exactly the tension the author is playing with. You are looking at rapaciousness as a moral failing.
Which, it is.
True, But the author is forcing us to look at it as an administrative outcome.
Oh, interesting.
Right, because if a leader tries to be infinitely giving, which we just established is the impossible ideal, they will inevitably run out of resources.
Because there's not unlimited money.
Exactly. And when they run out of resources, the state collapses. And what happens then? Foreign invaders come in and plunder the populace anyway.
Oh, wow. So the strategy shifts completely.
It's no longer about pursuing absolute moral perfection. It is about exercising ruthless prudence.
Prudence, meaning knowing exactly which flaws you can afford to have.
You hit the nail on the head. The text argues that a leader must be prudent enough to know which of these so-called vices will actually cause them to lose their state.
And which ones won't.
Right. You have to guard your reputation fiercely against the ruinous ones. But for the vices that don't threaten your security, the text advises you can let them go on with less hesitation.
So if I'm understanding the implication here, the ultimate takeaway from this opening section is a total reevaluation of bad PR.
Essentially, yes.
The author is telling you not to worry about the infamy of certain vices if those vices are structurally necessary to keep the whole operation from sinking.
Because in this framework, what looks like a beautiful virtue can actually cause your utter ruin.
And what looks like a terrible vice can bring you security and well-being.
It completely decouples morality from effectiveness. It demands that we ask, what is the actual tangible outcome of this behavior?
Regardless of what label polite society slaps on it. Which leads us perfectly into the core of this deep dive. The ultimate example of a ruinous virtue in this text is one we usually celebrate without a second thought.
Liberality, or, extreme generosity.
The liberality paradox.
Yeah.
The text states that being held liberal is, on the surface, a great thing. You want people to think you are generous.
Sure, everyone wants to be the good guy.
But then it drops this incredibly cynical caveat. It says that if you practice generosity virtuously and exactly as it should be used, it actually hurts you.
We really need to dissect the mechanics of that claim because it defies everything we are taught.
It really does.
The text is arguing that if you practice generosity in a genuinely virtuous way, meaning quietly, appropriately, without seeking the spotlight.
Like doing good deeds in secret.
Exactly. It goes completely unrecognized by the public, and if it's not recognized, you don't get the political credit for it.
Right.
Consequently, you will still be accused of the exact opposite. You will suffer the infamy of meanness, despite actually being generous.
Now, wait a minute. I have to push back hard on this on behalf of, well, everyone listening.
I figured you might.
Are we really saying that doing good deeds behind the scenes is a negative? What happened to virtue being its own reward?
It's a fair question.
If you are a leader and you quietly redirect funds to fix a broken school system without calling a press conference, or you privately help a struggling employee, why does the text argue that this literally hurts you?
Because of how perception works.
It just seems incredibly bleak to suggest that a good deed is useless unless you issue a press release.
It is bleak, but you have to look at the currency this text deals in. This isn't a text about personal spiritual salvation.
Right, it's about politics.
It's about the maintenance of power. In the public arena, unseen virtue has zero political utility.
Zero. Wow.
Think about it. If you are operating a state or a massive organization, the public doesn't have the capacity to investigate your quiet, behind-the-scenes benevolence.
They only judge by what they can see.
Exactly. Therefore, to get the actual credit to maintain a reputation for liberality, you are forced into the realm of spectacle.
So you have to be flashy about it.
The text explicitly says you cannot leave out any kind of lavish display.
And that spectacle is the trap. It's the trap of good PR.
It absolutely is.
To keep the title of the generous one, you have to throw the biggest festivals, construct the most magnificent public works, hand out the most visible rewards.
And the text lays out this fascinating, terrifying domino effect of where this addiction to lavishness inevitably leads.
It's not just a list of steps, it's a psychological and economic chain reaction. Let's trace that causality for everyone listening.
The mechanism starts with the baseline of expectations. When a leader makes a lavish display, they aren't just spending money.
What are they doing?
They are setting a new standard. The public quickly acclimatizes to that level of generosity. It becomes a baseline expectation.
Oh, right. It's like a drug addiction for the state. The body builds a tolerance. A lavish party this year is just an expected Tuesday next year.
That is a perfect way to put it. You need higher and higher doses of spectacle just to maintain the exact same level of public approval.
So what happens when the money runs out?
Well, to fund those exponentially increasing displays, the leader inevitably consumes all their
The
resources.
treasury just gets completely drained.
And that is the point of no return. Because to maintain that reputation for liberality once the reserves are gone, the leader is forced into desperation.
They have to get the money from somewhere.
Right. The text notes that the leader must extraordinarily burden the people. They have to become rigorous with taxes and do everything possible just to extract money.
So let's look at the sheer irony of this mechanism.
Mm.
The leader wanted to be loved for being generous.
Right. That was the whole goal.
They threw parties for the elite. They handed out visible favors. But who pays for that when the treasury runs dry?
The unseen majority.
The working class. The people who weren't invited to the lavish displays are suddenly hit with crippling taxes to fund the PR campaign of the leader.
And that creates the inevitable blowback. Because the leader is taxing them into the ground, the infinite majority of the subjects begin to hate them.
Naturally.
Furthermore, because the leader has drained the treasury, they are now poor. And in the brutal calculus of power, a poor leader is esteemed by no one.
They lose their aura of invincibility.
They do. The state becomes incredibly fragile. The text says that because the leader has offended the many to reward the few, they feel every least hardship.
And run into risk at the slightest danger.
The irony is absolute. The pursuit of the title of generous has directly birthed the very things the leader was trying to avoid.
Poverty, hatred, and vulnerability.
Exactly.
You know, it makes me think of the psychology of entitlement. If you have a friend, let's say a friend who always buys rounds of drinks for the whole bar to look like a big shot.
We all know someone like that.
Right. They give you a lavish gift once, you are grateful. If they give it to you twice, you kind of expect it.
And if they stop giving it to you.
That's the thing. You don't just return to being neutral. You actively resent them, as if they have stolen something from you.
It's so true.
And the text points this out, doesn't it? When the prince realizes the treasury is empty and tries to pull back on the lavish spending, what happens?
The public turns on him instantly. The moment he tries to close the tab and behave responsibly, he immediately incurs the infamy of meanness,
All the past generosity is just forgotten.
erased by the sudden withdrawal of the spectacle.
Okay, so if we accept this premise, we are looking at a deeply broken system here.
It is a harsh reality.
If trying to give people what they want fundamentally destroys the economy that supports them, and trying to pull back makes them despise you, are you just trapped?
It seems like a no-win scenario.
Did you just resign yourself to being hated from day one? Like, what is the actual tactical advice here?
This is where the author makes a brilliant and highly controversial philosophical pivot. He advocates for redefining the very concept of generosity through the lens of meanness.
So how does that actually work? If you are just stingy from the beginning, won't they overthrow you immediately?
You'd think so, but the text argues that a prudent leader must develop an incredibly thick skin against the specific criticism of being called mean or miserly.
You just have to endure it.
You have to endure the short-term outrage of the elites and the cultural commentators who demand lavish spending.
Why?
Because over time, and time is the critical variable here, this mean leader will actually come to be viewed as the truly liberal one.
Walk me through the math on that. How does hoarding your money eventually make people think you're generous?
It all comes down to financial independence. Because of his parsimony, his strict frugality, his baseline income is actually enough for him.
So he isn't constantly operating at a deficit,
Right, he isn't desperate for cash to fund spectacles.
which means when a real crisis hits, he's ready.
Exactly. He can defend himself from whoever makes war on him, and he can undertake necessary campaigns for the security of the state, all without burdening the general populace with extraordinary taxes.
Let's really drill down into the specific logic the author uses here, because there is one quote that I think is the linchpin of this entire philosophy.
Let's hear it.
The text says, "He comes to use liberality with all those from whom he does not take, who are infinite, and meanness with all those to whom he does not give, who are few."
It's a masterclass in the mathematics of power.
It completely upends the dictionary definition of the word. He uses liberality with all those from whom he does not take.
It's profound.
True generosity, according to this argument, isn't about giving people extra. It isn't about a bonus. It is simply the act of not taking what is already theirs.
It forces us to ask what the primary function of a leader should be.
We are so conditioned by modern politics and corporate culture to view a generous leader as someone handing out visible rewards.
Grants, subsidies, massive perks.
Exactly. But this text argues that the truest, most sustainable form of societal protection a leader can offer is simply leaving the public's wealth intact.
It's the generosity of restraint.
Think about this in a very practical, modern context for you, the listener. Imagine you are a citizen. Is it better for you to have a leader who gives you a massive, highly publicized stimulus check?
Something that makes them look incredibly benevolent on the evening news.
Right. But then, to cover the debt incurred by that payout, they quietly raise your taxes for the next decade.
Or is it better to have a leader who gives you absolutely no handouts ever, but runs such a tight, frugal ship that your baseline taxes remain low and stable for your entire life?
The psychology of loss aversion plays a huge role here, doesn't it?
It does. Behavioral economics tells us that people hate having something taken away from them far more than they enjoy receiving something of equal value.
And this text, written half a millennium ago, intuitively understands that.
It firmly plants its flag on the side of the frugal leader. Over time, the infinite majority, the taxpayers, realize they are being spared the burden of the leader's ego.
And the only people who are angry are the few.
The courtiers, the lobbyists, the insiders who expected lavish handouts and were denied.
And the author doesn't just want us to take his word for it based on theory. He actually brings the receipts.
He does. He points to specific modern examples from his own era to prove that this isn't just a philosophical thought experiment.
It's observable, historical fact.
Yes, the author claims quite boldly that in our times, great things have only been accomplished by those who are considered mean.
And those who chase the reputation of liberality.
The text bluntly states they were eliminated.
The first example he drops is a wild one, Pope Julius II. And I want us to really linger on the sheer audacity of this historical case study.
It's a great example.
The text explicitly says that Pope Julius used a reputation for liberality to attain the papacy. He basically faked being a generous guy to get the top job.
It is the ultimate political bait and switch.
But the moment he was in power, he abandoned that reputation completely because he needed the funds to wage war.
But look at how the author frames it. He isn't condemning the Pope for being deceitful.
No, he's kind of praising him.
He is highlighting a vital distinction between the acquisition of power and the maintenance of power. Faking generosity is recognized as a valid acquisition strategy.
But actually practicing it once you are in charge, when the bills are your responsibility.
That is administrative suicide.
I have to interject, though. If a leader fakes it to get the job and then immediately pivots to being stingy, doesn't that destroy their credibility?
You would think so.
Doesn't the public feel betrayed?
In the short term, yes, the elites who expected the continuation of the gravy train feel betrayed. But remember the core mechanism.
Right, the infinite majority versus the few.
If the Pope's sudden stinginess means he can fund his wars of defense without massively taxing the commoners, the broader populace eventually accepts the stability he provides.
So meanness here is not a character flaw.
It is an administrative tool.
The author also brings up the King of France at the time, Louis XII. He notes that the king carried on numerous wars without ever imposing extraordinary taxes on his subjects.
And why was that?
Because all the extra expenses for those campaigns were covered by his long-practiced parsimony.
He had built a buffer. By enduring the reputation of being a miser during peacetime, he possessed the capital to protect the state during wartime.
And without triggering a domestic revolt over taxation.
Exactly.
And he makes the exact same point about the King of Spain, Ferdinand. The text asserts that if Ferdinand had cared about being seen as a big spender, if he had been held liberal, he would not have been able to undertake, let alone win, so many campaigns.
The synthesis of these three historical examples is quite profound.
It really is.
To avoid having to rob your subjects, to maintain the capacity to defend yourself, to avoid becoming poor and contemptible, and to avoid being forced into rapaciousness just to survive.
You have to actively embrace the label of being stingy.
As the text states, it is one of those vices which enable him to rule.
It requires a massive sacrifice of the ego, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You have to willingly accept being despised by the cultural elites, the media of the day, and the hangers-on to secure the long-term survival of the state.
And the financial safety of the invisible majority. That is exactly right.
But, the author knows his audience is going to spot a glaring historical exception. And he addresses it head-on.
He anticipates the pushback.
Yes. The Julius Caesar objection. I was reading this thinking, wait, what about the most famous conqueror of all time?
Caesar was notoriously generous.
He threw unbelievable public games, he gave away absolute fortunes, he forgave debts, and he didn't just get a state, he attained an empire.
Doesn't Caesar's success completely invalidate the entire argument about parsimony?
It is the perfect counter-argument.
Right.
Caesar attained empire with liberality. So how does the text reconcile that massive historical contradiction?
It reconciles it with a brilliant distinction about timing and position. The text says either you are already a prince or you are on the path to acquiring it.
The path versus the destination.
This is the crucial variable that changes the entire equation.
Right. If you are already a prince, if you are already the established power sitting on the throne, liberality is deeply damaging for all the reasons we just discussed.
Your treasury is finite.
But if you are in the process of acquiring power, it is absolutely necessary to be held liberal. You have to be perceived as incredibly generous to build a coalition.
To buy loyalty, to get people to take a risk on you.
And the text applies this directly to Caesar. Caesar was a man who wanted to attain the Principate of Rome. He was on the path.
He used his massive debts and lavish spending as a deliberate tool for acquisition. He bought the favor of the Roman mob.
But, and this is the fascinating turning point, the text argues that if Caesar had lived and had not become temperate with his expenses after arriving in power, he would have destroyed that empire.
I love this part because it perfectly maps onto the modern business world.
It really does. It's exactly the difference between the startup phase and the maintenance phase of a tech monopoly.
Walk us through that analogy. I think it's very helpful.
Think about a massive tech startup in its first 5 years. What do? They offer the product for free or heavily subsidize it?
They give their employees free meals, on-site massages, infinite vacation days.
Massive stock options. They are hemorrhaging money, burning through venture capital. Why? Because they are in the acquisition phase.
They are buying market share, buying the best talent, buying user loyalty.
In this phase, extreme generosity is an investment.
But then they go public. They attain market dominance. They become the prince.
Exactly. Once they have acquired the market, the rules of gravity apply again. The return on that initial investment stops.
If a mature, publicly traded monopoly keeps burning cash like a scrappy startup,
The shareholders will revolt, the stock will crash, and the company will fail. So what happens? The free meals disappear, the perks are slashed.
the mass layoffs begin. The company pivots to ruthless parsimony,
It's the brutal necessity of the pivot.
which raises a deeply cynical question about modern political campaigns.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
When candidates promise massive, sweeping generosity, free education, canceled debts, massive infrastructure projects.
This logic suggests those promises are inherently designed to be broken once power is attained.
Because to actually fulfill them, using the existing treasury would bankrupt the state. Caesar bought Rome with promises and gifts, but the author is certain that to keep Rome, he would have had to become a miser.
He just got assassinated before he had to make the unpopular budget cuts.
Exactly.
It's incredible how well the framework holds up. But wait, the author has one final loophole. There's one specific scenario where a leader can be infinitely generous.
Where they don't have to pull back.
Right, and where spending wildly doesn't ruin them.
Yes, the text addresses leaders who take armies into foreign lands and shower their soldiers with unimaginable wealth.
And the rule for this scenario relies on another brilliant binary condition. It asks, whose bank account is actually being drained?
Are you spending your own money, meaning the wealth of your state and your subjects, or are you spending someone else's money?
The rules of economics completely change depending on the source of the funds.
The text states unequivocally that if the prince is spending from what is his own and his subjects, he must be fiercely sparing. He must be mean.
But if he is spending what belongs to someone else, he should not leave out any part of liberality.
Let's talk about the specific mechanics of spending someone else's money in this historical context. The text doesn't mince words.
No, it lists the methods right out. Feeding on booty, pillage, and ransom.
It is the raw economics of conquest. The text explains that for a prince who leads an army out of his own territory and manages on the wealth of conquered lands, extreme liberality is not just allowed.
It's mandatory.
Exactly.
Why mandatory, though?
Because if a general doesn't distribute the plunder, if he hoards the booty for himself, his soldiers will mutiny.
Oh, right. They are enduring the horrors of war for the promise of wealth.
If he isn't incredibly generous with the spoils, he won't be followed.
I mean, reflecting on the sheer pragmatism of this is wild. categorizing booty and pillage as a legitimate, necessary budgeting strategy.
It's violent, but logically, within the framework of 16th century statecraft, it perfectly holds up.
It is the ultimate free lunch for a ruler's reputation.
The author validates this by pointing to legendary historical figures like Cyrus, Caesar during his campaigns in Gaul, and Alexander the Great.
They gave away massive amounts of gold, land, and slaves.
But they were giving away what did not belong to them or their domestic subjects. The text concludes that spending what belongs to someone else does not take reputation from you.
It actually adds to it.
Only spending your own is what harms you.
That line just hits so hard because it distills the entire complex argument into a single, unbreakable rule. Which brings us to the closing thought of this chapter.
A statement that really ties everything we've debated into a neat, terrifying bow.
The author writes, "There is nothing that consumes itself as much as liberality. While you use it, you lose the capacity to do so."
It's like a thermodynamic law of power.
It truly is. It's the law of conservation of energy applied to morality and economics. The very act of being visibly generous physically destroys your structural ability to be generous in the future.
Liberality consumes itself. It is a fire that burns its own fuel. If you don't carefully control the burn rate, there is nothing left but ash.
And when the fuel is gone, when the treasury is empty, you are left with poverty.
And to escape that poverty, you have to resort to rapaciousness,
Yeah.
squeezing your own people dry, which brings hatred.
So liberality is ultimately a self-defeating virtue. It promises love, but guarantees eventual hatred.
Which perfectly encapsulates the entire mission of this text. It forces the reader to abandon sentimental, comforting ideas about leadership.
And look strictly at the cold mechanics of cause and effect.
Exactly.
What a mind-bending journey this has been. We started by looking at a supposedly impossible list of human virtues, and we've arrived at a place where meanness is actually revealed to be the ultimate form of societal protection.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
We've explored how the mechanics of money and generosity completely flip, depending on whether it's your money or a conquered neighbor's.
And whether you're a startup trying to acquire power or an established monopoly trying to maintain it.
It certainly challenges you to look at the underlying motivations and the hidden costs behind every public act of immense generosity you see in the world today.
It really does. It makes you question the bill that will inevitably arrive tomorrow for the party being thrown today.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to pivot away from empires and statecraft for a moment and leave you with a final provocative thought to ponder on your own.
I think this is really important for everyday life.
The text we examine today explicitly limits its advice to rulers, to generals, and the management of states. But does this thermodynamic law of liberality apply to our everyday personal lives?
Think about the people in your life, or perhaps even look at your own behavior. Think about those who constantly bend over backward to be generous with their time.
Their emotional energy, their labor.
By constantly trying to maintain the reputation of being the one who always says yes, the one who is infinitely available for everyone, are they falling into the liberality trap?
Are they actually consuming their own capacity to be helpful?
Are they burning their own fuel until they run completely empty, eventually risking resentment, burnout, and the collapse of their own well-being?
It's a profound question about the boundaries of our own personal liberality.
Yeah.
And whether a little bit of strategic meanness, setting boundaries, saying no, is actually the most generous thing we can do for our long-term survival. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning those accepted definitions of what it means to be good, and we will see you next time.